Bring on the Sabbath, a production of the Church of God International. Broadcast live from Tyler, Texas.
With Wes White, Nancy White, and Jeff Reed. Join us tonight as we continue our exciting Bible study of the book of Genesis. We welcome your comments and your questions in our chat room, on Facebook, YouTube, or via email. Now, your host, Wes White.
And
Surprise!
We're on. Surprise!
Yeah.
Live TV, folks.
At least Jeff wasn't picking his nose when the
No.
live came. Okay, welcome to Bring on the Sabbath. This is the 31st Bring on the
31,
Sabbath.
like my age.
Exactly. Jeff and Nancy, happy Sabbath to you.
Happy
Happy
Sabbath.
Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath
Good
to
to be
everybody
here.
out watching us.
Yes, and it's now our after American Thanksgiving show, and we're so glad to be back here with you in our studios here in Tyler, Texas.
We sure are.
Yeah. Wes seems to be maybe in a bad mood tonight.
Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going on.
Let me guess. I
Okay.
bet he just got out of a meeting and he just fired a couple of employees here at CGI.
You know, I bet you're right. I bet he just fired a couple of CGI employees this evening.
Yeah, and I bet he fired them for being smarter than him.
You think he fired them for being smarter than him?
I think so.
Then why did he fire only two?
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. I know what you two are all about tonight. Let me explain to you. Here's what's going on. No one got fired. There was no meeting. What's going on is that these two are always trying to make sure that I don't get too big for my britches.
Keep the man down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always be humble, man.
Yeah.
Always stay humble.
Nancy's
That's right. It's your job. It's our job to make sure you're humble.
Yeah, so, yeah.
All right, but be careful because humility, you know, is like underwear.
Why is humility like underwear?
Well, because they're both essential, but if they show, they're indecent.
Okay, so you're saying if I have humility, don't flaunt my humility.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jeff and Nancy. Let's move on. What would I do without these two? Now, when we say that, you know, they obviously can't read a teleprompter, but that's okay. When we say that we're glad you're here tonight, it's because, let's get serious, God's love is here every Friday evening. When you send us messages, we feel that love, but there's also the love that you communicate with each other out there on the internet. While the show is going on, you're talking to each other. You're making new friends, and I know that a lot of you out there are connected with each other via Facebook, and it's because you got to meeting each other here on bots, and this is great what you're doing, because this is not supposed to be just a CGI program. Mm-hmm. This show was never designed to be only for CGI people. Mm-hmm. This show was created for all Sabbath keepers. Mm-hmm. And we created bots so that God's love could be shared around the world on the Sabbath day, no matter which alphabet soup Church of God that you're in. And guess what? What you're doing is you are showing the one identifier that Jesus said would prove that you are his people, and that is what? That you keep the Sabbath perfectly? No.
Don't eat pork?
Don't eat pork? No. That you have love for each other. So good job. Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you for being with your brothers and sisters that are all around the world as we do this show about the Sabbath. Tonight, Nancy is going to talk about the president-elect and whether or not we Christians should fear a Donald Trump presidency, because there's a lot of debate that's going on right now, and I'm seeing a whole lot of it on Facebook about what's going to happen after Donald Trump is sworn in on January 20th.
That's right.
We've got all kinds of other good stuff on the show that we hope will serve you as you bring on the Sabbath. Jeff and Nancy and I are here to be helpers of your joy. Right. We're not here to lord it over you. We're here to serve you. And you got to understand, there are people out there who don't like this show.
You're telling lies. No. How could anyone not like this show?
Right.
It's got me, it's got Jeff, you're here.
Right. I think that was sarcasm. Anyway, our detractors say that this show, they say, oh, this show's all about Wes. And it's really not. Now, granted, you're stuck having to look at my old man face a lot, but this show is actually about you. All about you as we try to continually point you towards Jesus. We don't try to point you into the direction of some half-baked headline theology prophecy that we come up with. or fully baked. We don't try to point you in the direction of some conspiracy theory. We don't try to point you in the direction of some political party. That's not what we do. Our number one job is to point you to Jesus as we teach God's law, his annual high days, the Sermon on the Mount, the gospel of the kingdom, and helping the poor. And one final thought on this, I want to ask you, do you see all these pictures behind us? We got a new cameraman, James. Welcome, James. And he's going to try to get all these pictures up there. And while we're at it, let's say hi to Steve. He's here working the slides. And Wesley's working the board. We want to thank these three guys for being here. We want to put your picture up here. Yes, you. We want your picture. No matter how ugly you are, send us a picture of you. Yes, even Skip Martin.
All right, Skip's with us tonight, so he's going to love that.
Oh, is he online?
Yeah, he's online.
All right. So email us a picture of you or your family or your church group. We want to start rotating new pictures up here. And our email address is bots@cgi.org, and tell us your name or the name of your church group. And when you send a picture of you or your church group, remember, it does not have to be CGI, okay? We welcome everybody. So we want to get your picture up here. Send us a picture, bots@cgi.org. Enough of that. How about if we do some quick announcements? Nancy.
Guess what? The Feast of Tabernacles is 10 months away.
10 months?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. 10 months. So we want you to encourage you to start making your plans right away. Wes and I have already made our housing reservations at Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky. We're going to have the praise band back up there in 2017. The feast site was a great success this year, and we had over 300 people registered at LBL in 2016. We had great sermons and seminars and kids classes and music. It was a wonderful feast site, and we can't wait to get back up there next year. We had so many activities for kids and families. Last year, and we're going to do it again this year. We had over 60 kids at that feast site.
We did.
60. And if you have kids and your kids want to be around other kids in the church, make some new friends, Land Between the Lakes is a place to be. Join Wes and I there.
Yes, please start thinking about your feast plans for next year, whether it's LBL or some of our other feast sites, Myrtle Beach, Florida, Philippines. In the international news, we have some feast sites in Africa. We have them all over, all over the world. So start thinking about it. We'll have information for you soon. It's only September, right? September? September? Wow, it's feast in September. If you want to create a great feast for you and your family, start planning today. So select your feast site. God wants us to assemble on his high days and rejoice during his wonderful feast.
Yeah, and before you go into your next announcement, we're going to go off script here. Get your camera ready. We're going to see how good a job he does. Everybody should have one of these now. It's getting close to the first of the year. And everybody should have.
This is old man announcement number 1.
Yeah.
What is that?
This is a daily planner.
It's a pocket.
Oh, wait.
A pocket planner.
Look, zoom on this right here.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, zoom on this right here. All right, this is my pocket planner.
Yeah, okay. you need to start planning for the feast now. And see what you do. I'm serious now. These guys are making jokes. But what you do every year is you get your day planner, and then what you do is you tie it in and put your holy days in here. See, can you get a little closer there without getting everybody seasick? A little closer, James. And see, I've already got like the Lord's Supper and the night to be much observed and the Passover.
What day is that on?
In here. And what?
What day is that? Passover. Let me see.
I can't turn it because it'll ruin the camera shot.
Oh, okay.
Start planning your feast right now. Don't wait until, spring to start thinking of the spring high days. Don't wait till August to start thinking about the Feast of Tabernacles. Start planning everything right now. Get it in your calendar so you don't accidentally schedule something during a high day, okay? Oh, not so loud.
Okay, yeah,
sorry, Wesley. Okay,
right,
Nancy.
All right. Okay, so now time to make another announcement. We want to remind you again that we have teen Sabbath school lessons online. This is something people have asked for. Have you checked them out yet? These lessons are a 4-part series on the subject of the Sabbath.
Yeah, these lessons can be used in your church's teen Sabbath school program, or maybe at the feast, or actually at your home. If you do a home Bible study, you can use these lessons.
Yeah, and don't forget that we want your input on these lessons. Let us know what you think of them, and if you like them, please let others know about these lessons for kids. Please share them. Again, they're free, and we hope to write some more, but we want to hear from you before we do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, tonight we're going to continue our study on the book of Genesis. We're going to talk about Cain, the guy who committed the first murder in the Bible, at least the first that's recorded.
Yep.
And Tim Puzak who from New Mexico is going to be with us here tonight. He's going to tell us stuff about Hebrew words as we continue studying the Torah. We always enjoy Tim's contribution to the show. And let me give you a sneak peek to next week's show. In our Genesis section next week, Tim is going to start talking to us about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Tim keeps up with this topic as he actually does translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, so be with us next week as we start that. And talk to us tonight. Let us know how you're doing this evening. And our last show, some of you emailed me, and I didn't get your emails until I got home that night.
What?
There was some kind of a delay on my email system, so I'm sorry. Ain't technology wonderful?
That's sarcasm.
Yes, it is. That was sarcasm. But let's try it again tonight.
Sarcasm?
No, not sarcasm. let's try writing to us.
Email us.
Email us, bots@cgi.org, or talk to us in our chat room or Facebook or YouTube. Our two people here are standing by and waiting to hear from you. Let us know if you're having a birthday or an anniversary or whatever. We want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And remember that we'll have bots all 5 Fridays this month, so we're not taking off any Fridays. We're on tonight. We're going to be on for the next 4 consecutive weeks after this.
Assuming we don't get canceled, but that's another topic. Okay.
And remember that we're going to be broadcasting bots. We're going to do it. Bring on the Sabbath from Lexington, Kentucky.
All
Wonder
right,
Family
that's gonna
Weekend.
be fun. Yay,
We're
we did that
going
last
to
year,
we're going to
didn't
have room for a studio audience. So if you want to be with us,
right.
we'll
Who's bringing
broadcast
snacks?
bots. The studio audience should bring us snacks.
All right.
No, maybe we'll bring snacks. But we want to meet you there and have y'all be part of the audience.
All right, let's briefly mention our live church services tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time from Tyler, Texas. Jeff, who's preaching tomorrow?
That would be, it was going to be Wynn, but now it's me. I'm preaching tomorrow, yes.
Oh, I hope you have a sermon ready. You're going to do that after the show?
right.
After the show is over, I will start working on that sermon. So it should be a
Send
good
us
one.
ideas for Jeff's
I actually know I'm going to be talking about living waters tomorrow. It's going to be
great.
It's going to be
Good.
fun.
Sounds like a good one.
So please tune in tomorrow
Yeah,
for our
tune
live
in,
church
tune in,
services.
tune in,
And
yes.
I can't give them anything on the
Yeah,
teleprompter.
yeah, tune in. 11 o'clock tomorrow for
And
the
it's a
first
special
services.
weekend, isn't it?
Special weekend. We'll have a regular church service at 11 o'clock, and then we'll turn off the cameras during the potluck.
That's right.
All right.
Why do we turn off the cameras, Nancy?
Well, because we don't want to see. You tell people to write us, they're writing us.
Trying to
so
see
we
what they're
turn off-
saying here.
Yeah, we turn off the cameras because we don't want to see Wes's table manners.
Yeah, you don't want to see that. Okay.
All right, that's so true.
All right.
And the cameras come back on at 2 o'clock for our Family P.
Yay,
It's our monthly
Family
casual, informal, and interactive Bible study. We're going to see if we can answer a question we got from one of the teams asked last week, when did atheism begin in the world?
All right, good.
And we got a question about God being all-powerful. And I'll be giving a study about iron sharpening iron. And you don't want to miss this Bible study.
Nope.
Last time we had over 700 views with this, so we're also going to have the kids do scripture or maybe read some scriptures during the Bible study. It's going to be live, interactive, and we want your comments and questions as well.
And we're going to have a lot of music. So
Yeah. Music.
Music. So tune in tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock,
Nancy,
yes.
Nancy, please tell us what's coming up on the upcoming women's conference.
All right. Well, this is a new church ladies conference number 2. It's the owner's manual. It's set for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, March 3rd through the 5th, 2017 at Timberline Baptist Camp, and that's where we had it last year. It's out online at newchurchlady.org. There's a schedule, and you can register already. We already had one person register. So we need your ideas, though, to help us with planning. Please message me on Facebook about what you think are the top 3 issues facing Christian women at any age. That's women, please message me on Facebook and let us know what you think are the top 3 things that are facing Christian women in this age.
And the web address is newchurchlady.org, no spaces.
No spaces.
Okay. Summer camp. Jeff.
Yes,
talk
we're
to
going to be
us.
doing summer camp again this year, and we're hoping to have it during the week of July 4th. Haven't confirmed that yet, but once we get it confirmed, we will let everybody know with a website and registration page. We want to make it very affordable for everyone. We had so much so much fun.
Yes, we did.
Last year at camp. I was actually looking through some of the photos that we took the other day just to see, get an idea of what we could do next year.
Yeah.
So it was just for all these memories of like no sleep and like a lot of smells.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
yeah,
they're kids.
So I have a question. Is Ignite, is it branded Ignite now?
It's that Ignite. So it's
That's our
Ignite
preteen
Summer
group?
Camp.
That's our
2000.
preteen?
Yeah. So Ignite Summer Camp 2017. That's our preteen group branding.
Okay,
And
yeah,
we'll
cool.
and we'll be working on that and get you all the information as soon as we get it.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing your kids come to our camp. Here's something else that we want to tell you about. You know, CGI has churches all over the world. We talked about our feast sites all over.
Mm-hmm.
We also have great presences in places like Jamaica.
Oh.
The Jamaican CGI has been doing some terrific evangelism over the decades. And over the past few weeks, I've had email communication with Ian Boyne in Jamaica because I want to learn more about the brethren there in the Caribbean. And I found out that Ian Boyne has a weekly electronic communication, and it's called the Jamaica Mailer. And I'm going to start reading it. I'm going to start looking at it. I thought I'd mention it to you too. So if you're interested in seeing what the brethren in Jamaica are doing, just Google the Jamaica Mailer every week. And let me know if you like it. Tell me what you think
So
of
if you
it.
Google Jamaica Mailer, that'll come right up. You'll see it.
I believe it does.
Okay,
yes,
I will
it's-
try that.
Yeah. I'm also going to start receiving Canadian CGI weekly newsletters. And if it's all right, I'd like to start posting these newsletters on Facebook.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
all of you out there can see how our Canadian brethren are doing. So
Oh,
feel free to friend me on Facebook so we can keep you updated on all this stuff. Now, a question for all of you. I know that we've got brethren watching us from the Philippines. John is out there, I'm sure, tonight.
John is watching, yes.
John is watching. Do you guys have some kind of an electronic newsletter or some other electronic publication that the rest of us can look at? So we can see what you guys are up to, so we can pray about what you're doing.
That's right. Let's learn about each other all over the world so that we can pray for each other. What do you think? Please share your comments with us regarding this idea.
Yeah. Now, one more point before we go into our first commercial break. Again, the three of us, and I hate to get serious after we've been having so much fun. The three of us on this show are politically neutral. We don't push any political agenda on this show. And I know some of you are getting tired of hearing me say that, but we've got to repeat it because every Friday night we get a bunch of new people watching the show for the first time. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that BOTS is not Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. Instead, we take sides on biblical issues. We don't take sides on political issues. For example, we've mentioned on several occasions on this show that we are really, really anti-abortion because we believe that killing unborn babies is murder. To us, abortion is a biblical issue. Now, has abortion become politicized?
You bet.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
But it's still, no matter what you do with it in the political world, it's still a biblical issue. And we're not going to stay away from it just because it's been politicized, because it is a biblical issue. And we mention our political neutrality to you because whenever we make any kind of statement on this show, we want everyone out there to never say, oh, they just say that because they're Republicans or they're Democrats or they're liberals or they're conservatives. No. When we teach you something, we try to make it biblical. And when we teach it, we want you to know and we want you to say, they don't have a political axe to grind. They're teaching this stuff because they're trying to take a totally biblical point of view on the issue. Now, another point. We teach against lies, half-truths, and misrepresentations. Because lies, half-truths, and misrepresentations are a sin. And we know this from the Bible. This is not a political stance. This is a biblical stance. So we don't apologize for preaching the importance of telling the truth all the time. And let's get specific about this as we discuss this very biblical principle. Jeff.
All right. Much has been reported about fake news in the traditional media in the last few weeks. And if you've been watching us for some time, you will know that we have been outspoken. We have spoken out against fake news since we started this program. And this is something that I personally, I am passionate about. And most people who share fake news do so because it aligns with their personal ideology or beliefs. For example, many people who oppose Trump during the election and after have shared this. And I'll get the slide up there as soon as I get my guy back.
I don't know what
put it up
happened.
there.
We need our slide up.
We need a slide, please.
Some people were having trouble hearing Wes.
Oh, they were?
They're asking to turn up the mic. And,
Okay.
And there.
Is it West having trouble with it? Is that all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And so here's your slide.
Okay, here's the slide. All right. And then the slide says, and this is important you see the slide because I got to put this in context. And right here it says, this is a slide that's been appearing on Facebook. It says, if I were to run I'd run as a Republican, They're the dumbest group of voters in the country. They believe anything on Fox News. I could lie and they'd still eat it up. I bet my numbers would be terrific. So again, this was shared by millions of people via Facebook posts.
I've seen it many, many times.
And it's a complete fabrication and a lie.
Yep.
There have been similar types of false quotes attributed to various popular people. I've seen many people, many church people, unknowingly share false quotes from the Pope.
Yeah.
Why do they do this? I think it's because it agrees with the worldview. So they assume it must be true. Because if I see something where Pope's talking against anti-Sabbath or something or whatever, it's Pope's that agrees with my worldview. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not okay to bear false witness to support your views, even if the views you are supporting are true. Even if my views are true, I can't use false information to support those views. If I share false quotes from religious leaders to support Sabbath keeping, I'm guilty of lying. If I share fake news stories to support my beliefs, I am guilty of lying. Even if my beliefs are true, it actually brings shame on me and hurts my credibility in these things. Mm-hmm. And it hurts the credibility of other Christians. And so most fake news websites, and again, we've been talking about this for a while, do it because it's highly profitable. They're making a lot of money off the public's gullibility.
Yeah, and please let me interject something. On bots, we never tell you not to be involved in the political process. What we say is this. We say, as Christians, if you involve yourself in the political process, always act like a Christian. Never compromise your Christian beliefs. Don't promote fake news. And Jeff, I think you have some examples of fake news.
Yes, I do. I do have some examples. So here's some examples of fake news stories you may have seen and maybe accidentally shared. Mm-hmm. One of them is, archaeologists have discovered Pharaoh's chariot and the bones of horses and men under the Red Sea. I've seen this shared so many times.
It's fake.
I've seen it too.
Newly found document holds eyewitness account of Jesus performing miracles.
It's fake.
Fake. President Obama has limited churches to offering twice monthly services.
It's fake.
Gas exploration in Saudi Arabia reportedly uncovered human remains of gigantic proportions.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so
there you go.
and we have a picture of that also. And what happens is that other websites and blogs will take these fake stories and report them as true. Right. A lot of times the reporters are gullible of these places, and they will report fake news as true. And many Christian sites have related these very false stories as being true. I've seen it. So you have multiple websites and multiple sources reporting lies. And when that happens, the truth becomes obscured. So believe it or not, the Apostle Paul had to deal with similar problems. So I want to read a scripture, and we can put it on the screen, Titus 1, verses 10. It says, "For there are many insubordinate, both idle talkers and deceivers, especially those with circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole households, teaching things which they ought not, for the sake of dishonest gain. One of them, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons." So right here, when he says that, he's quoting Epimenides, if I pronounce it, Epimenides. I had it right when I practiced this. A Cretan philosopher who lived in 600 BC to make a point about the party of the circumcision living in Crete that were spreading lies for dishonest gain. So just like the ones who write, so they were spreading lies for money. That's just kind of like people who write the fake articles. Mm-hmm. They're doing it not for your benefit. They do it because they know people will share these things and they'll make money of it. So and continue reading in verse 13. It says, "This testimony is true." He says, "Therefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith." So it's my job as an elder in the church to rebuke sharply those who share lies. So why? Because they need to stop. You don't need to share lies. And why do we need to stop? So we all may be sound in the faith.
Yeah.
Now, I'm doing a seminar at the Winter Family Weekend about how to determine fact from fiction.
That's great, because someone just said, well, how do we know it's fake? So good.
Okay,
So
the seminar, I'm going to show you a lot of examples of fake news, a lot of examples of misinformation, mm-hmm. and show you how to determine the best you can, because sometimes we're all fooled. We can all get fooled by things. Mm-hmm. But the tools we need as Christians to be credible sources for the truth. Yeah. And so if you're at the Winter Family Weekend, hope to see you at my seminar.
Can you give us one idea right now, or have you not written it yet?
I have not written it yet.
Okay.
Well, Nancy and I will be there to learn more about it. We want to do it for the purpose of to learn how credible sources of the truth
Yes.
can be.
I
Yeah.
look forward to it because
Yeah.
this is a big problem.
Yeah, great points, Jeff. Thanks. And let's close this out so that we can take our break. And I got to tell you just one more thing. And we've got a lot of people that we got to do shout outs for.
We do.
Brethren, I've got to ask you this. Are there any other preachers or teachers out there who are trying to help you with this type of misinformation? And I hope there are. I hope that we're not the only ones trying to help you out with this. And I don't point this out that there aren't enough preachers teaching this. I don't do it as a self-congratulatory pat on the back for us here at BOTS. I mention this only because I want you to know that we're different here at BOTS. In case, if you haven't figured it out, we're different. And we will not apologize for being different. The three of us are enthusiastic about the gospel message. Now, you need to understand, not all other ministers are enthusiastic about the gospel. There are actually some ministers out there who say that we're not going to have great growth in this age of the church because they say the church is dying. We're not going to have great growth. They look at the job of the ministry as being caretakers of a dying body. And some ministers see themselves as hospice workers whose only job is to provide comfort to a church that's going into extinction. On BOTS, we're the exact opposite. Now, let me be very personal and very frank. My late wife, Linda, was a hospice patient. Some of you knew Linda. Linda and I were married for 25 years, and she died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I nursed her through her declining health and into her death. So I know all about dying patients. When we're taking care of a hospice patient, we don't admonish them to get better. There's no getting better. You can only comfort them and make the dying process as painless and as comfortable as possible. In my mind, the Church of God is not a hospice patient. You out there are not a hospice patient. We look at you as people who are filled with God's Holy Spirit. And for that reason, we're going to encourage you. We're speaking figuratively, not literally here. We're going to encourage you figuratively to be healthy. We tell you figuratively to exercise, cut back on bad food, stop smoking, don't drink to excess, lose some weight. Again, we're talking figuratively, not literally. And we do this because we believe that you are not a hospice patient, and we're not going to treat you like you're a hospice patient. You are a child of God, and we want to help you with your spiritual health and with your spiritual growth. So, with this in mind, we say to you, don't fall into the trap of forwarding false information, which is a form of spreading lies and is many times a form of bearing false witness. Because this is what a dying church does. A church that's spiritually alive rejoices in truth and avoids all lies. Let's all live lives of Christian joy and happiness, always rejoicing in the truth. Again, at BOTS, we do all this because it's our privilege to serve you. That's why we're here. So tonight, I ask you, are you a dying hospice patient who we should just give comfort to as we watch you slowly slip into the grave? Or are you with us in our desire to grow in grace and knowledge? Are you content to let the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel of the kingdom, just to let it be an afterthought? Or are you with us as we say that we're not going down without a fight on the issue of preaching the gospel and feeding the flock? Do you want us here at BOTS to only speak soothing words to you? Or do you want spiritual meat? Do you want us to concentrate only on trivial matters? Or do you want us to talk about the weightier matters of the law, which are judgment, mercy, and faith? So come on, we want to hear from you tonight on this. Tell us what you're thinking. Are you in spiritual hospice, or do you have a pulse? While we're taking a break, why don't you write to us in our chat room or write to us on Facebook or YouTube. You can email us, bots@cgi.org. Let's take a break. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Nancy's Alpha and Omega segment on the Donald Trump presidency.
In the early days of the church, there was a great controversy between Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. A dividing line seemed to have been drawn between converts of Jerusalem's apostles and congregations led by Paul. We know that there was a time when Paul was upset with Peter over issues dealing with the treatment of Gentiles. Was it a situation where Paul taught that the law was done away with? Or was it a situation where Paul taught against a perverse and apostate religion that claimed to represent the teachings of the Old Testament? We would like to offer you a free booklet entitled The Book of Galatians, a Commentary. It's free. You can get it here at cgi.org. Again, the title is The Book of Galatians, a Commentary at cgi.org.
Okay.
And you're out there. Thank you.
Let's see, we're going to do some quick shout outs. I've got one right off the bat from Karen Weiss. She says, "You got too many good subjects tonight. Don't let people comment so you can get to the subjects." Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Too late, we're going to.
Okay. Nancy, what do you got?
My sister. Okay. On YouTube, we got Sadia. You have to write it out phonetically so I can say it correctly. And Trudy watching us there. We got on the website, we've got John Black, Mimi, Margie, Sister with Love, Grover's Friend, Super Jim, Skip Martin. He wasn't happy about your comment.
Uh-oh.
William, Carl H., Kevin from Hessville, Bud.
Kevin from Hessville.
Yep.
All right, Kevin.
Lady Tex, Joy Forever Guy, P. Shaw, I think that's Paul Shaw, Jarek, and Jeff. I think that's everybody. And we have some comments too. Both Bud and Sister with Love know a little bit about nursing a patient. Bud was through that with his wife, a hospice situation, his late wife. And then Sister with Love had been through it with her first husband.
Okay.
Grover's Friend wants you to know that there aren't many of you guys out there, so God bless and keep up the good work. And both Lady Tex and Sister with Love said they want spiritual meat.
All right. We'll do our best. Okay, Jeff, what do you got for us tonight?
I got Russ Cahill says hello from Rochester, New York. Lisa McComb says, sorry I'm late. Well, she's here. We have John in Philippines who's watching. He says, thanks for informing us about the emails. We'll discuss with the ministers. I guess they'll see if they got something like that.
Okay.
My mom's watching Alabama. Terry from the office is watching at home. And Melkor in the Philippines is watching as well.
All right.
All right,
Glad to have
hi,
you all here with
everybody.
us.
We're glad
Yes.
you're here.
Yeah. All right, we're going to add another new feature to the show tonight.
What? Don't you think our show is already too long?
Yeah, it's already too long. We always
We're
go
like
over
in the
time.
second book of Genesis?
Yeah, and we keep adding stuff, but I think this new thing is a good thing that we're going to
what
do
is it?
tonight.
That's right. Every week we're going to ask one of you to read your favorite scripture on the show.
On the show.
That's
On the show.
We're going to hear
great.
your voice. And tonight we have Mimi from Canada, I hope. Mimi, are you there with us tonight?
I sure am. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Mimi.
Hi, Mimi.
Mimi, thank you so much.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here with us. We got a picture of Mimi on the screen. Everybody can see her. Let's see. When did we first meet Mimi? I don't remember.
Online. Ever
Yeah.
since I've been coming here.
I met her the first.
Probably back.
At the feast.
Probably back. Yeah, exactly.
At the feast.
Yeah, I about remember when I first started working here at the church and I was doing the webcast. Mimi was the first person I saw on there writing something in the
All
comments.
right, good.
Right.
Mimi, are you nervous about the fact that thousands of people are listening to your voice right now?
That's kind of scary, you know that.
That's why I said it. Mimi, would you please give us your favorite scripture? Would you read it for us? Tell us what it is and then read it.
Okay, it's Isaiah 55:12. For you shall go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall break forth into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands.
I love that. That's one of our
good
praise
scripture.
songs. Remember that song we do? You shall go out with joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Okay. All right, Nancy
All
missed her
right.
line again.
Did you no, I'm clapping. Did you tell Mimi to pick that scripture so you could sing?
No, I did not. Mimi, tell him. You picked it out. Mimi?
What's that? Sorry.
Nancy's accusing me of picking that scripture for you so that I could sing the song. But you picked it. I didn't pick it for you.
Well, it actually is a song that I learned a long time ago, so that was a very good rendition.
Well, thank you, Mimi. Well, Mimi, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah,
We
thank you,
greatly
Mimi.
appreciate it, and we love you very much, Mimi.
We love you, Mimi.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night. Mimi's always fun. Okay. Before we get into Nancy's Alpha and Omega, I want to put in a quick plug. It's the holiday season right now, right?
Ever, yeah.
So a lot of people out there are focusing on Christmas.
Indeed.
At CGI, we've got 2 video messages on the subject of Christmas, and I think you'll find them a little bit different than other messages that you might have heard on the subject. And these messages are free. You can check them out online at cgi.org. One is called The Greatest Story Never Told. You know, you've heard the greatest story ever told. This is the greatest story never told. It tells the true story behind the birth of Jesus, because we got a lot of interesting information regarding his birth that nobody seems to pick up on. The other message is called Should We Join the War on Christmas? And for those of you who aren't familiar with our teachings on the subject of Christmas, we've got a booklet on the subject of Christmas. So go to our website and check out all these things. They're free. Everything that we have, we give away free. We never charge for anything. Okay, we're ready for our Alpha and Omega current events. Nancy, what have you got for us tonight?
Well, even though the election is over, I know, hard to believe, it is over, people.
It's over.
People are
Stop.
still, we've elected a new president. Get over it. Okay. They're still arguing about it. In about a week, the Electoral College is set to meet to cast their votes for president, and some Hillary supporters are saying these electors must break the pledges to vote for Trump and vote for Hillary instead. The Hillary reporters say that a 4-year presidency of Donald Trump will destroy the country. They say he will destroy businesses. They say he will take away our rights. They say he will ruin our economic system. Let's stop and take a breath here. Again, Jeff and Wes and I don't take sides on political issues because our focus is on preaching the gospel, feeding the flock, and helping the poor. If you voted, that is fine. We're not saying don't vote. We only mention this because we do everything we can to stay neutral on these issues. Tonight, I want to look at what has happened in American history to see what we can learn about the American presidency. We want to consider if, based on presidential history, there is any reason to believe there is any cause for alarm regarding some of the concerns that people are expressing about President-elect Trump. Let's start by examining the first anti-establishment president we ever had, Thomas Jefferson. That's right, you might be startled. You might be saying, Thomas Jefferson, he was a founding father. He was pro-establishment. Actually, he wasn't. He was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. He was a governor of Virginia during the Revolution, but he was not part of the group that created our current Constitution. And he was initially against it. He was known as being anti-federalist. And as an anti-federalist, he helped to get rid of John Adams as president. And when it was announced that Jefferson was elected and was going to take the oath of office, people were upset. Go figure, upset over an election. All right, here are some of the things they said about Jefferson. They said he would confiscate all of our Bibles. They said he would make Christianity illegal.
Yep.
They said he would start promoting the intermarrying of the races. They said he was Muslim. That's right, I'm not making that up. They said he was going to destroy our economic system. People were genuinely afraid of him. In truth, Jefferson didn't do most of these things. Well, except for one, trying to dismantle the economic system that Alexander Hamilton had built. Jefferson believed our country's economic system that had been followed by Washington and Adams needed to be destroyed. So on the first day he became president, he ordered the smartest guys he could find to figure out a way, at the minimum, to change Hamilton's economic system, or even better, destroy it. And much to Jefferson's chagrin, they came back and said not only could they not destroy it because its destruction would financially ruin the country, but they also realized that they wouldn't be able to change any of it because just one change would make the whole thing collapse. So in the end, Jefferson was not able to make this revolutionary change to the American economic system that he wanted to make. All right, then we come to Andrew Jackson. Prior to him, all of the presidents had been of the aristocracy. All the presidents previously were from Massachusetts and Virginia. Jackson was a Westerner from Tennessee. I bet they called him a hillbilly.
They did.
The ruling class looked at Jackson with total disdain. They felt like he was vulgar white trash. His wife smoked a pipe. She had married Jackson before her divorce from her first husband was finalized. Jackson had killed people in duels. His temper almost got the U.S. into a war with Britain over an incident in Florida when Jackson was a colonel in the U.S. Army. On Inauguration Day, his enemies were able to say, "I told you so," because he opened the White House to the public, which came in and went on a rampage, tearing down drapes, spitting on the carpets, and standing on the furniture. In today's money, Jackson's mob, yeah, can you believe that? On Inauguration Day, caused several $100,000 worth of damage. And then we come to Abraham Lincoln, who was called an uneducated baboon. Can you believe people said that? He had only about 2 years of formal education. And people both in the North and in the South said that if Lincoln was elected, he would destroy the Union. But we're still here, people. And after his victory in the 1860 election, sure enough, Southern states started seceding, just as they predicted. So for many, many years, Northerners said that if they had elected someone else, there would not have been a civil war where over 600,000 soldiers died. Very early in his presidency, Lincoln's Secretary of State, William Seward, tried to pull a coup d'etat of sorts. He tried to convince Lincoln to appoint him as a sort of prime minister who would handle the reins of power. Seward honestly believed that Lincoln was not capable of guiding the country through the Civil War. In 1912, Woodrow Wilson, who is a Democrat, his lack of experience in politics caused a lot of people concern. Wilson took office at the time he had only had 2 years of political experience, and that is governor of New Jersey. And he spent most of his career in academia instead of politics. Yet he beat out both Republican incumbent President Taft and former President Teddy Roosevelt, who was running as a third-party candidate at that time. People worried about Wilson's ability to navigate the intricate maze of legislative obstacles and actually get anything done. I mean, you know what Washington's like, right? So looking back, we can see that Wilson passed some sizable legislation, and his strategy helped American troops be in the right place at the right time to make a positive impact on World War I. He's also credited with being the dominant diplomatic force leading the negotiations in Versailles. Today, historians look back with admiration at the term called Wilsonian democracy. So, good things looking back. All right, John Kennedy, another president who caused fear and consternation. And why? Well, during the election, Protestants had a great fear of a Catholic becoming the chief executive officer of this country. They believed with all their hearts that the Pope in Rome would be the one telling Kennedy how to run this country. They thought that Catholicism was going to start, Catholics were going to start persecuting Protestants during Kennedy's administration. In every example that we just come through, all of these presidents, none of these dire predictions came true. None. The U.S. has had some good presidents, and we've had some bad presidents who did illegal things, and some immoral presidents. But the country survived, and in fact thrived in spite of those who sat in the Oval Office. Even if you aren't worried yet, though, the news is going to try and get you stirred up or worried, because that's what they do. When that happens, remember that your prayers can make a difference. At Abraham's urging, God agreed to spare Sodom and Gomorrah, even if only 1 out of every 240 people were righteous. When the news shows stir you up, also remember that Christians have another advocate to care for and protect us. Here are some examples that you can look to in the Bible. God worked directly with Pharaoh, sending Joseph to Egypt to protect Joseph's family during the famine that was coming. God then hardened another Pharaoh's heart so he could wreck Egypt in setting the Israelites free. God intervened with Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king, several times, even sending him out to act like an animal or live like an animal in order to show old Neb that he needed to respect the one true God. God softened the heart of a pagan king, Cyrus, so that he would send the Israelites back to Jerusalem to rebuild the city in preparation for the return of Jesus. Now, are we suggesting that there's absolutely no danger of President-elect Trump ruining this country? We can't make that prediction. There's no way to know. What we're saying is that we can't live our lives in fear of what might happen. If President-elect Trump creates some bad problems, our nation will have to deal with it then. And until it happens, let's not spend our lives worrying. And what if it does happen? We still must live our lives as positive, happy Christians and focus on doing the job that we're here to do, which is, say it with me, preach the gospel, feed the flock, and help the poor. And finally, I suppose we should perhaps apologize for discussing the American election this evening. We're doing this because it's still like right in our faces right now. It's still in the leading story every night on the news. It's like a zombie that won't die no matter how many times you try to kill it. And even The Walking Dead. Even though we're talking about one nation's election, the principle of trusting God and praying for leaders is global. We at BOTS are a global and international ministry. We don't see little American flags all over the desks here. We don't have any of those, aren't wearing little American flag buttons. Instead, we'll see pictures of God's people. Back here, we talked about those earlier. We would never want to be thought of as just an American ministry that focuses only on the needs of this nation. On BOTS, it's our job to pray for Christians all around the world. So please join us as we pray for all leaders in all countries. Let's pray that all leaders will rule in a way that brings peace and safety to all nations. And let's especially pray for Jesus to return because he is the only perfect leader.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with our study on the book of Genesis. Tim is standing by as we speak now.
Great.
Any more?
Science and philosophy don't seem to have a lot in common, but one thing they agree on is the aspect of paradigms. A paradigm is a distinct set of concepts. It includes thought patterns, theories, and standards. A paradigm is a basis from which one operates. Hi, I'm Wes White, and welcome to another Connecting History and the Bible on CGI.org. Let's go to Plymouth, Massachusetts. I'm standing at the bay where the Pilgrims landed in 1620. This is where religious separatists from England stepped off the Mayflower and set up the first colony in New England. By the way, I'm a descendant from Peregrine White, the first known English child born to Pilgrims in America. One of the many problems the Mayflower experienced was that it was an old ship. It wasn't good for storms. And because of bad weather, the trip to America took 2 months when it should have only taken 4 weeks. And get this, its destination was supposed to be Virginia. That's right, the Pilgrims had no business settling down here in what is now the state of Massachusetts. Their royal charter gave them permission to land in Virginia, not here 500 miles to the north. But bad weather and the decrepit condition of the Mayflower forced them to land in Massachusetts, where they had little choice but to settle there. The good news is that before they left the ship, they created this wonderful document called the Mayflower Compact, which is a recognition of the rights and equalities of all who settled in this new colony. Now, their landing in the wrong place created major problems. The weather in Massachusetts is very different than the weather in Virginia. So the Pilgrims weren't prepared for the harsh, cold New England winters that they were going to experience. They had prepared for a much milder climate in the south. They had made plans for one climate, but then they had to adjust to another. This was a major paradigm shift. So much of what they thought they had been taught about the new land was no longer correct. Everything they had planned for regarding planting crops and building houses had to be changed after they landed in the wrong place. And this major paradigm shift didn't come easily. Of the 102 pilgrims who landed in Plymouth, 45 died that first winter. Also, within a few years after that landing, the English accidentally infected the local Native American population with European diseases. It's estimated that at least 90% of the indigenous people in this region died within several years after first contact with these English immigrants. To call this situation a paradigm shift for the Native Americans would be quite the understatement. For both the English and the indigenous people whose whole world was completely changed around, it happened the minute the Pilgrims stepped off the Mayflower. Again, paradigm shifts. And paradigm shifts can be physical in nature, like this one in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620, or paradigm shifts can be spiritual in nature. And we have a message on the subject of paradigm shifts. It's free. It's on our website here at cgi.org. Why don't you check it out? Again, the title is Paradigm Shifts. And we'll see you again next time on Connecting History and the Bible at cgi.org.
We're back. We've got a couple more shout-outs before we bring Tim Puzek on. Nancy, you go first.
Okay, Alberta 9 and joined us, and so did Ray and Olivia Doyle.
Hi there. How y'all doing?
All right, and I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is from our YouTube viewer. Does the Bible speak about trade wars? Trump is all about trade wars.
Okay, does the Bible speak about trade wars? Absolutely, positively not. And I believe that people think that trade wars are biblical because I don't know how many times on the front page of the Plain Truth magazine, when I was a young guy in the church in the 70s, there was always a big splash headline about trade wars.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And you know, a lot of people want to tie trade wars into prophetic end times and all that, and that's cool. I don't see that we can necessarily prove anything or say, oh, there are going to be trade wars in our lifetime. I don't think we can prove that. But I think that a lot of our people think the trade wars are predicted in the Bible because of our old Plain Truth magazines.
Possibly.
So we started that, and now we're stuck with it.
So anyway, we get these things in our history, and it's hard for us to let them go. Okay, you have anything else, Nancy?
Nope.
Okay, I got a hi from Fred Holly. He was having some problems with the feed, but I think he's got it fixed. Here's a question from Deanne Willis. Now let's listen to this.
Okay.
Hi, gang. Does 1 Corinthians 15 verses 51 through 52 mean that the dead are unaware of the passage of time, so that when one dies, then the next moment of their consciousness, they will be in the resurrection? 1 Corinthians 15:52, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. Why are you bringing politics into this? No, I'm sorry. At the last trump.
Well, this is the first Trump.
Seems to say that from the time of the death and resurrection will just be a moment in time from the individual. Thanks for taking the question. I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that specific verse is saying that it seems that in a moment, a twinkling of an eye, is the time that it takes for us to be transformed. Right. But we have other verses that show the dead know nothing,
right,
and that the dead sleep. And so there's a lot of things to know that as soon as you die, the next thing, instantly, you'll be caught up to meet Christ in the air.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Deanne. In your interpretation of those scriptures, it means the dead are unaware of passage of time. When one dies, the next moment of their consciousness, they will be in the resurrection. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. If anybody else has any comments or questions on that, let us know. Do we have any other shout-outs?
We had John Black was joining us.
John Black, how
and
you
he says,
doing?
Amen, Nancy, to, I guess, your last segment.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, good. All right, are we ready to get back into the book of Genesis?
Okay, let's do it.
We've got a really interesting guy that we need to deal with in the book of Genesis. This guy exists in the earliest days of mankind's history. And I'm not talking about Charles Gross, okay? I'm talking about somebody else.
Or Skip Martin.
His name is Cain. There's so much controversy about this guy named Cain, and we're going to start dealing with those controversies tonight. We're not going to get through them tonight. There's a lot more that the Bible doesn't say about Cain than it does say about Cain. And even those silent things seem to be telling us stuff. So, you know, we've got to be real careful, because when we do this, we have these studies, we're going to start getting into category 3. And Tim's going to give you a perspective on Cain. I'm going to give a different perspective on Cain. They're a little bit different. They don't necessarily agree with each other, but it doesn't matter, because we're just wading around in the weeds. These are not church doctrines, but we're trying to understand these things, because we always get questions about Cain. We've got to see what we can learn, because people are asking. Again, I think there are some lessons that we Christians can learn from this area of Genesis. And we don't want to just learn stuff for the sake of academics. No, we've got to learn stuff so that it will help us in our walk with Christ. And I think we're going to see some of that as we look at Cain. We know from earlier parts of this chapter, Genesis 4, that Cain has killed his brother Abel. And we'll look at that incident later, the incident of the murder, because believe it or not, it really seems to have some significance for Christians who believe that the return of Jesus is like coming in the next couple of years. There's a lesson going on with Cain that we can learn from that to help us so that we don't make that mistake. Now it says in Genesis 4:17 that Cain got himself a wife. And here's where the question comes in. Where in the world did Cain get his wife? I mean, at this point in history, some people say, weren't there only 4 people on the earth? There were Adam, Eve, Abel, and Cain. And then that number gets reduced by 25%. There's only 3 because Abel has been killed by Cain. Well, not so fast. We can't necessarily make that kind of an assumption about there only being 3 persons on the earth at that time. We can't be real dogmatic about it. And here's where we have to look at possible scenarios. And we're going to give you 2 possible scenarios tonight. We're going to give you Tim's and we're going to give you mine. I don't know if we're going to get to mine tonight. And there may be more scenarios that we haven't thought about. You may have a possible scenario that you'd like to share with us that you want to give us, and that's great. And I'd like to think that we can perhaps, get some light shed on this Cain situation by going to Josephus. Now, someone says, oh no, who's Josephus? Josephus lived around the time of Christ. He saw the destruction of the temple. He wrote about the destruction of the temple. Josephus was a Jewish historian and writer, and we like to look at Josephus' writing from a historical perspective because Josephus' writings are absolutely not inspired scripture, just like any history book. They're not perfect. But again, it provides us with some helpful history. Okay, according to Josephus, Adam and Eve had 33 sons and 23 daughters. Ouch! You mean to tell me that poor Eve had to give birth to...
I should be the one saying ouch.
Okay, say ouch. You mean poor Eve had to give birth to 55 kids? Well, that's not inconceivable when you consider the lifespans of people back then. Remember that these folks back then lived to be over 900 years. And if a woman lives to be over 900, it's not too hard to imagine that she has many more childbearing years than women do today. So 56 kids shouldn't surprise us for a woman who's living to be over 900 years old. And if this is correct, notice I said if, Cain then married one of his sisters. Now, remember that mankind has laws against someone marrying a sister or a first cousin. We have these laws against intermarrying because intermarrying can cause birth defects. Well, these laws of incest, we call them that, they didn't always exist. Remember that Abraham married his half-sister. Apparently back in those times, the human gene pool was stronger than it is now. Abraham lived right after the flood. Abraham was really close to the flood. Again, Adam and Eve lived long before the flood, so it's not inconceivable that their children married each other. It was a totally different time back then when it came to the human gene pool. Again, this is only one possible scenario. So let's look at another possible scenario. I've given you one now. Joining us once again from the great state of New Mexico is our friend Tim Puzak. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim.
Hello,
Shabbat
Tim.
shalom.
Nice to have you. Tim, please talk to us about incest and what's written in the Bible.
Yeah, that's just plain nonsense.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's what we say on Box, that God's law existed from the beginning and has always existed through the entire history of mankind, and they still exist today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, God makes it clear in Malachi 3:6 that Yahweh does not change. So tell us, Tim, how does this relate to whether or not Cain committed the sin of incest?
He commanded us to keep it. And so we know that he wouldn't command us to do something that was impossible. Incest was a sin from the first, before the first human was created.
So then how do we reconcile this problem with Cain? If Cain didn't marry his sister, where did his wife come from?
Wow, that's a really good question. How come no one has asked that question before? Our Father created millions and millions of animals, all so diverse and all with a purpose. He created many of each. He didn't just create 2 lambs. If that was the case, if he just created 2 lambs and he killed one to cover Adam's sin and then killed another for Eve's sin, wow, we'd be fresh out of lambs.
Yeah.
Our Father is a creator, and that's what he does. He created many of each animal. So was it impossible for our Father to only create one man and one woman? Did he say, here's Adam and Eve? Sorry, that's all I've got. Is there some restriction set upon him? He was only allowed to create 2 humans and no more. Has the arm of God been shortened?
Now, this is kind of revolutionary, Tim.
It really is.
Yeah, maybe so. I see several ways that our Father could have created a system for the man and the woman to continue without violating the law of incest. These would only be speculation, as Wes mentioned, because he never told us. Keep in mind that it is also speculation that Cain and Seth married through incest. We are never even told if they married their sisters.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, it is.
If we're going to speculate, let's speculate knowing good from evil, knowing what's in our Father's law. If we must speculate, let's do it knowing that God would not have set us up to sin. Let's do it taking from good knowledge and from the tree of life. Let's fill in the gaps in the story using right and good knowledge, rather than using knowledge of evil from that tree of good and evil. What if God created a wife for each of these men? Would that be so impossible? That would satisfy Genesis 3:20, and Eve would still be the mother of all living.
Right through the guys.
Yeah.
God would have then created a system whereby we did not have to sin. I have always believed that our Father created my wife just for me and me just for her.
I don't know if your wife would agree with that.
That's so sweet, though.
You may be right, Wes. Perhaps I'm getting a little carried away, but seriously, I believe that. What if God created a wife for each of the sons of Adam and Eve? What if he created a husband for each of their daughters? That's one possible scenario that I see. Remember how I said several studies back that the name of Adam literally means man, or better yet, human, and it's pronounced Adam. Well, keeping that in mind, let's read Genesis 5:1-2. This is the book of the generations of human. Adam. Notice the Hebrew spelling there? In the day that God created human, in the likeness of God, he made him. Male and female, he created them, and blessed them, and called their name human, Adam. In the day when they were created. Notice all the plural forms?
Yeah.
The theys and thems and they and their. I see another possibility because of all those plurals. Perhaps God created more than just the first man and woman. Maybe he created many others. He created many other animals. And they eventually married into the family of Adam and Eve. That could be a second possibility. Maybe those others were not yet being called as they were living outside of his garden. I like both these scenarios. But I do believe that I like the first one best. Maybe God created a man and a wife for Adam and for Eve's children, just as he created a wife for me. We don't know. He never told us. But if we're going to speculate, let's use the good knowledge that we've been given. This, however, we do know. The words of our Father will never fail. His law and his instructions are not bound by time. They exist forever. I know that he would not have created a system where we had to sin in order to survive.
All right, Tim, you've given us something to think about. So we want to ask you out there, what do you think? Why don't you share your comments and questions? We want to hear them. And if Tim, if anyone wants to contact you directly offline, how can they reach you?
You can send me an email, and it's just my name. It's Tim Puzak, and I'll spell that, Puzak @AOL.com. Or look me up on Facebook, Tim Puzak, and at the beginning of the show we had my Facebook picture on the show. So.
Okay. And next week, Tim and I, we're going to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I know that these words might sound very boring, Dead Sea Scrolls, but I think you're going to find our study of the scrolls to be fascinating. It's got some really, really interesting stuff. So thanks again, Tim.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been enjoyable once again. I look forward to our next Friday night.
Great. And we're going to take a break, but don't go away because we've still got some more on the book of Genesis, and we've still got to look at some stuff regarding this guy named Cain. We'll be right back.
The Bible tells us that we should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together, but some people can't always attend worship service on a regular basis. This happens when people are ill, or if they can't drive, or if they live too far away from other brethren. At the Church of God International, we encourage you to fellowship with like-minded Sabbath keepers. But if you can't attend with others, please feel free to attend with us online. We meet every Sabbath at 11 a.m. Central Time. You may join us by going to the website www.cgi.org. That is www.cgi.org. Experience the love of our Sabbath services. You will hear God's words explained. You will hear music that praises our Heavenly Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. Don't miss out on this opportunity to keep God's Sabbath in a joyful manner.
Bring on the Sabbath is made possible by the tithes, offerings, and generous donations of viewers just like you.
Thank you for your support. We're back, and we have no more shout-outs, so we can go right back into the book of Genesis, right?
Sure.
Okay. We want to thank Tim again, and we hope to see him again next week. let's get back to Genesis chapter 4 where it talks about Adam and Eve procreating. It says, now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain, and she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. Really interesting statement. Now, right off the bat, when we read this, the scholars and the linguists tell us we have a family problem. This is not me talking. This is the scholars and the linguists, because we're going to see that this first family in human history has got a lot of dysfunctionality in it. In the King James Version, Eve is saying that she had gotten a man from the Lord. That's what she said. Now, whenever a child is born, most of the time, the parents give praise and thanks to God. They're grateful for the new offspring. And this is the way it's supposed to be. It's a miracle from God. But when Eve says she got a man from the Lord, she doesn't seem to be saying that I got this male child. This is according to those who really understand Hebrew. They claim that what she's saying is this: the birth of this male son came directly from God. Ooh, kind of similar. Doesn't that sound familiar? It sounds to me like the birth of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. In Matthew, we see that Jesus' birth is not just some wonderful birth of some child like happens millions of times a day. Every miracle is a birth. Every birth is a miracle from God. But Jesus' birth was in a category all by itself. Well, Eve seems to be saying the same thing. She's believing the same thing about Cain when he's born. She seems to be saying that this child is more special than he really is. And it sounds like she thinks that this man-child is the promised seed. And remember that when God gives promises to people, many times he doesn't give a time frame. How many times in the Bible do we read a promise and there's a time frame given to it? Very seldom. It happens sometimes, but it doesn't. Right. But usually it doesn't. And when God made the promise of Jesus that we saw in Genesis 3:15, remember that? We spent a whole lot of time on that, Genesis 3:15. Oh, yeah. The proto-evangelium.
We spent about 10 weeks on that.
We spent 10 weeks on that. The first promise of Jesus is in Genesis 3:15. When he gave that promise to Adam and Eve and to Satan, he also gave it to the serpent. When he gave that promise, he gave absolutely no time frame. So it shouldn't surprise us that Eve had no idea that it was going to take 4,000 years for the promised seed to be born, and that it would take at least another 2,000 years after that for the final promise of the seed to make the whole world right, to turn it back into the Garden of Eden. Because that's what happened. 4,000 years before Jesus, the promise was made. 4,000 years later, he was born in Bethlehem. 2,000 years after that, that's where we are today. Mm-hmm. We hope Jesus returns soon, but we have no guarantee. Eve had no idea that it was going to take this long. And I want to point out that, we've talked about Genesis 3:15 and 3:16 in great detail. And you can go back and watch these previous shows. It's all out there on CGI.org. And I would suggest you start with Bots 18 and move forward, because that's where we started our book of Genesis study. Anyway, when the Bible tells us that Jesus is going to return to rule as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, it doesn't tell us the year, does it? And so many of the prophecies that we read about this all throughout the Bible, especially when they deal with the coming kingdom on the earth, these prophecies don't give us a date. And for that reason, people want to believe that the coming of the Messiah is going to be in their lifetimes. And we know that people have been believing in the coming of the Messiah in their lifetimes. They've been doing it for at least the last 2,000 years. You cannot find a generation in the last 2,000 years of history that didn't believe that they were so special that Jesus had to return in their lifetime. They all believed it. And we've got that going on right now in my lifetime. I mean, in my lifetime, I don't know how many times I have been told that Jesus is going to return in this generation.
How many generations have you been alive?
I've been alive a lot of generations. The first time I heard it, that Jesus was supposed to return, was in 1975. And I went to a church that published a book with the date right on the cover, 1975 in prophecy.
You know the first time I heard it?
When?
1980.
1980.
And it was a different church. It wasn't a Church of God, but that's what they told me when I was 10. Yeah. Christ is coming back in 1980.
Yeah. And since that time that Jeff's talking about and I'm talking about, I have been told many more times that Jesus' return is imminent. Mm-hmm. People are doing it right now as we speak. We're in the gun lab. So this was not unique to mankind in the last 2,000 years since the death and resurrection, but it also happened before the birth of Jesus. And probably the most notable example of someone claiming that they were living through the establishment of the Messiah during their lifetime was when Nimrod's mother, right after the Noachian deluge, during the Tower of Babel rebellion. This guy Nimrod that we read in Genesis, we're going to study him at length pretty soon, and that's why we're probably never going to finish the book of Genesis. But Nimrod's mother was making that claim. Yeah, Nimrod's mother was making that claim about her son Nimrod during his lifetime, and right after he was dead, supposedly he was resurrected. We'll get into that. We're going to go into a lot of detail that this Antichrist guy named Nimrod. Some say he was the first Antichrist, but actually, I believe the case can be made for Cain that he can be called the first Antichrist. Because here in Genesis 4, we seem to see Eve getting herself all worked up, believing that the Messiah that was promised in Genesis 3:15 and 16 was right there, her baby boy, right there to make things right now in her lifetime. And if that's what she believed, she was wrong. Cain was obviously not the promised Messiah. And it's easy for us to see that looking at Eve's situation with 20/20 hindsight. Eve didn't have the benefit of our 20/20 hindsight. So if Eve was wrong on this, we can't be too hard on her. Now, once we understand how mommy looked at this little boy as she was raising him, the story of Cain and Abel make a lot more sense. And if you raise a kid into thinking that he's the Messiah, you're going to have nothing but problems with him.
I guess he believed the PR.
He believed his mommy's PR. And if you raise a kid that way, you're going to have problems with him when he's an adult. I mean,
that's true.
Do we have anyone out there who wants to disagree with that statement? You raise a kid believing that he's the promised seed, that kid is going to have all kind of problems. He might even have a little mental instability that you have instilled in him. And Cain had some very bad problems in his personality. Notice what happens in verse 3. It says, "So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground." Verse 4, "Abel on his part also brought the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and for his offering he had no regard." And so the scripture says, "So Cain became very angry and his countenance fell." He started pouting. And when you get into the mode of pouting, nothing good's going to come out. It's like I've always said, once someone's asked the following question, nothing good is going to come after it. What's that smell? Once you ask, what's that smell?
What's that face? Why that face?
Nothing. And the same with, once you start this pouting thing, after that, nothing good's going to happen. Now, why did God reject Cain's meal offering and accept Abel's animal offering? Why? And I remember being told as a boy in Sunday school, I was told this years and years ago. It was because God only wanted animal sacrifices.
Hey, I was told the same thing in Sunday school.
It's wrong. There's no way. In the temple that we read in the Torah, we find that in the temple and also in the tabernacle, we find all kinds of grain sacrifices.
True.
Animals were not the only things that were offered to God as sacrifice. Right. Grain sacrifices were just as valuable to God as were animal sacrifices. And notice in verse 6, it says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry?'" So he starts out pouting. What happens after pouting? Now you start getting mad. Now you start imputing motives on other people. Start calling people names. You get mad at them, and then you do something wrong. He says, "Why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen?" He says in verse 7, "If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. And its desire is for you, but you must master it." There is a lesson in Christianity for every one of us here. That if you've got sin crouching at the door because you're pouting and then getting angry, you got to master that sin. Right. You got to get control of it. And you can't do it yourself. We're not strong enough by ourselves to do it. We've got to call on God, because behind that sin is Satan the devil. And anytime I try to go against Satan the devil myself, I'm going to lose every time.
That's true.
He's smarter than me. He's better looking than me.
Well, we don't
Seriously.
know that.
Yes, we do. It
I've not
says he's
seen
a
him.
beautiful creature.
was.
He was a beautiful. Okay. He's smarter than me. He's better looking.
I think I was beautiful
He's
at
going to
one
beat
point.
me every time. The only way that I'm going to beat Satan is by turning it over to Jesus Christ and let him beat Satan.
The Holy Spirit.
But we've got to, it says in here, you've got to master your sin. Nowhere here does God tell Cain that he's got the wrong type of sacrifice.
That's true, he doesn't.
The admonition that God gives to Cain is this. It has nothing to do with his sacrifice. The admonition is simple. Don't sin. Don't sin. Now, someone says, how could God tell Cain not to sin? According to 1 John 3:4, sin is what?
Transgression of the law.
Transgression of the law. Anytime someone wants to argue with you about the definition of sin, now there are basically three definitions. We won't get into them tonight. There are two other ones, but this is the main one. 1 John 3:4. Sin is the transgression of the law, or the breaking of the law, or the violation of the law. They say sin is transgression of the law. They say the law has not been introduced to mankind
That's
yet.
some people try to say that.
That's what they say.
They
That's
try to
what they
say
tell
that.
us. They say we have to wait till Moses comes along to learn about God's law. As Tim pointed out, no way. These folks in the Garden of Eden knew about God's law long before Moses.
It makes
How
perfect
did they
sense.
even know to bring a sacrifice?
I mean, because they had a relationship with him at the beginning. It makes perfect sense that he would
Yes.
kind of let him know these things.
Yes,
It
exactly.
makes really good sense.
Well, I have some things to say, but I'm going to wait a few thousand years.
Yeah, well, let's wait till Moses comes along and we'll tell you about, the law. No, that's ridiculous.
In the meantime, just supper.
And we, on this show, we've got to get into this whole concept of, did the law exist before Sinai? We need to talk about that. Yes, it did. For another study, another time. The 10 Commandments, but let's just, for summary now, because we're running out of time, the 10 Commandments were enforced before Moses. Don't ever let that leave your mind whenever you read the Bible. The 10 Commandments were enforced before Moses. And let me just add another one. And the 10 Commandments were enforced after the crucifixion.
And are enforced today.
And they're enforced today.
Every single one of them.
Every single one of them.
Not
Okay.
9.
All right. I have digressed so horribly now, and I'm watching my God. Let's go to verse 8.
Surprise, surprise.
Cain told Abel, his brother, and it came to pass that when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and he killed him. Verse 9, then the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? He asked God this question directly, face to face. Am I my brother's keeper?
Bold-faced lied to God.
I have seen on the news, and I know you're going to get mad at me for bringing up current events. Maybe we should just do away with the current events, Alpha and Omega current events. People are
Why
too
did it get
offended.
you all
by it.
wound up?
No, because people are getting offended. I have seen people on the news in rallies hold up signs that say, I am not my brother's keeper.
People have put that in
Christians are holding up signs.
to say,
And
I'm not brother's keeper.
they say, I am not my brother's keeper.
Wow.
Now, so they like to point that out because, and they say this because they say, when Cain asked God this question, God did not answer yes. These people say, God didn't say, of course you're your brother's keeper. Well, why didn't God say that? Is the fact that God didn't say it, that you are your brother's keeper, can we use this as justification that we are then not our brother's keeper? Absolutely not.
No, there's other scriptures that indicate we are responsible.
Okay, don't steal my thunder here,
Okay.
okay? Get ahead of the
Get
script now.
excited.
Get
Go
excited.
excited.
God didn't say it because he didn't have to. He didn't say it because, and why didn't he say it? Now you can tell us.
Because there's plenty of scripture
Because
and
there
law
are
that
plenty of other
says-
scriptures,
that
yes.
says you are your brother's keeper.
That's right.
Don't
And
lie. Don't commit
and-
adultery. All those.
Mm-hmm.
They probably knew that too.
They knew it.
If they knew the commandments, they knew about
They
love.
knew it.
Love your
God is your with
all
all
your
your heart,
heart.
and your neighbor as yourself. They knew this
Yes.
stuff.
Sure
Come
did.
on. All right, verse 10. We got to finish this up. Verse 10, God says to him, what have you done? What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Now, did the blood of Abel literally make some kind of noise that was audible?
No.
Of course not. This verse was figurative and not literal. And people say, oh, I take every word of the Bible literally. No, you don't. No, you don't. And we're going to show you examples
And
as
you
we go
shouldn't.
through this.
Yeah.
the Bible, we take it literally, but not totally, because there are figurative things that are said, and this is just one of them.
Just like when you're teaching, your message
Yeah.
might be figurative instead of literal.
Okay.
Anybody might
Exactly.
use that to describe things.
Some people say the Bible should be taken 100% literally, 100% of the time. No, the Bible should not.
So pluck out your eye and cut off your hand.
Yeah, exactly. And be as little children. Remember that one? Does that mean that
Put
we
your
should?
diapers back on and
Yeah.
start licking your thumb.
All right, and we need to have a short study in future scriptures about literalism of the Bible. We don't take everything. And, why don't we make that an assignment?
Yeah.
Can you all come up with some scriptures, email them to us at bots@cgi.org, and are you willing to help us out? Start this study for us and send us scriptures that we are not to take literally in the Bible. And please don't send us Exodus 20 and say, oh, you don't take that literally.
Yeah. We'd like to point out that Skip said he was glad his dad did not cut off his hand when he stole a piece of candy.
All right, well, some of us wish his dad had done that. But, all right, will you help us out with this?
Skip.
We want you to give us examples of where we read the Bible figuratively. All right, verse 11. We got to finish this. I keep getting off script. Okay. Now, it says in verse 11, now, God is speaking to Cain. He says, you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield up its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. Now, notice that God's curse here is twofold. We already have a curse on the ground. Didn't we already have a curse on the ground?
No, with Adam.
With Adam.
Absolutely.
The earth got that sin when Adam sinned in the Garden of Eden. And then now, after the sin of Cain, we have a further curse on the ground, and Cain is sentenced to be a vagabond. Okay. And let's be really clear here. Cain's curse, and we don't have time to get into this. We're out of time. I can't talk to you about Cain's
Say your
curse.
next sentence, though. Just say that whole sentence.
No, I don't want to say it. Okay, I don't want to say
I'm
it.
gonna read
So next time we're going
Cain's curse had nothing to do with race.
You took my thunder. Okay.
You said you were going to say it.
All
I
right,
said you
let me
got to
just
say
say,
it.
all right, we just said what Cain's curse was not.
That's true.
It had nothing to do with race. But next time, we're going to talk about what Cain's curse was. We told you what it wasn't. Nancy stole my thunder, but now we're going to tell you next time what it was. Do we have any shout-outs or comments? Because I'm getting some comments here.
Okay,
hear 'em
well,
coming
Tree
on your
said it's
phone.
a very good study, and then there's just conversations about how, not to take the cutting off your hand or plucking out your eye literally.
Okay, good. And what have you got, Jeff?
Nothing here that I see.
Okay. I've got something here if I can find it. It's an email. Fred Holly is back, and there's another one. No, there was another one, and I'm sorry I can't find it. Maybe I'll find. Let's take a quick break, and we'll see if we can find all our comments and wrap this up. And then remember, next week we're going to get on what Cain's curse is. So let's take a break. We'll be right back.
The Bible tells us that we should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together, but some people can't always attend worship service on a regular basis. This happens when people are ill, or if they can't drive, or if they live too far away from other brethren. At the Church of God International, we encourage you to fellowship with like-minded Sabbath keepers. But if you can't attend with others, please feel free to attend with us online. We meet every Sabbath at 11 a.m. Central Time. You may join us by going to the website www.cgi.org. That is www.cgi.org. Experience the love of our Sabbath services. You will hear God's words explained. You will hear music that praises our Heavenly Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. Don't miss out on this opportunity to keep God's Sabbath in a joyful manner.
Bring on the Sabbath is made possible by the tithes, offerings, and generous donations of viewers just like you.
Thank you for your support. We're back. Okay, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Again, it is our privilege that we were able to serve you, and we hope to see you next time. We're going to be here next Sabbath. We're going to be here the next 4 Sabbaths, so be sure to be with us. We're going to talk about Cain and the curse, what it was, and we're going to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we got all kind of other things we're going to go over with you next time. thank you so much for
Join us
being with us.
tomorrow at 11
Oh,
for church and 2 o'clock for family PE.
Let me make sure they understand that. 11 for church. Jeff is giving the sermon.
right.
And then come back at 2 o'clock for family praise and entertainment.
No, education.
Yeah. And
Entertainment.
education. Yeah. Let's see.
Education.
Karen Weiss says, great show. We wish you could have kept going. Thank you so much. All right, we'll see you next week. And for now.
And maybe see a lot of y'all tomorrow.
That's right.
That's
Come back
right.
tomorrow.
And y'all have a good Sabbath.